Okay, let me flip off this light because I got the window open and we'll see how bad this is. Let's flip on the laptop camera. Wow, there's a little bit of a glare. Let's fix that real quick. Well, that should be a little bit better, especially once I put my handsome face right in front of you again. Good morning. Hopefully everything's working. I got to do my traditional tests. I'm not the smartest man in the world, but we're going to double check. Says I'm live. Do we have audio? Maybe. It's 50-50. There we go. Let's see. Yeah, all right, perfect. Everything's working. This is going to be a little bit different. I know we're all used to some... Give me 1 second. A little bit different than we are used to, because we're going to talk about some... Hey, what's up? Daniel Bodecker. Bodecker? I'm just saying dumb shit. Sorry. We're going to talk about Sigmar today. We haven't talked about it in a while, and I told everybody be prepared for a little bit more non-40K content. So here it is. Test, 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 test. Mic check. 1 2 1 2. Fun fact about me. When I was a teenager, I used to tell myself I was going to be a rapper. Obviously, that did not end up happening. So let me pull up my list, and we're going to go. That's what we're going to do, is we're going to go over the list, and then we're going to go over the games. And we're going to talk about my experience with the tournament. You know, this is probably going to be a little bit longer of a stream, a little bit more in-depth of a video. It'll be very similar to what I do with the 40K tournament recaps. Yeah, that's right. We're going to talk about some Sigmar today, buddy. It'll be a lot like when I do my 40K tournament recaps. The only difference is I'm not gonna get the tables out and kind of walk everybody through individual turns. We're going to talk about rounds and scoring through each turn, but we're not going to do a whole walkthrough. Let me find my list. Should be this one. And before we dig in, let's... Actually, I think I can shut you down. Bring you up. I was unprepared. I'm usually unprepared, buddy. As much as I try to prepare for things, I can never feel like I'm prepared. It's just how it is. How it be. Let's pull up the old blue stacks. Can we see? That doesn't look like we can see very well. That looks terrible. Let's just go to full size and let's close you out, and we'll full screen that. Hopefully it doesn't mangle. Perfect. All right, so is there anything here I need to know? Nope, nope, nope. So we can close that out. All right, so we're gonna get into blue stacks. We're gonna go through the list first. All right, all right, all right. My goodness. For those that don't know, I've been digging into Sigmar a little bit more. I've been learning a bit more about it. My kids really enjoy the game, especially my daughter. My son, I guess, could take it or leave it. He has more interest in it than 40K. 40K is weird because he likes the idea behind it, but he's just not interested, which is fine. He's 10 years old. I don't expect that much interest. But when he saw the Lizardmen, the Seraphon box, he's like most little boys, big into dinosaurs. Not like most little boys uh, can name a whole lot of them. And maybe that is a lot of younger kids. I don't know. But from my experience, his knowledge about dinosaurs is probably higher than most, even kids at his age. So he saw that Seraphon box. Hey, what's up, Max? Nice to see you. Thanks for joining. So he saw that Seraphon box and was immediately drawn to it. He was like, "Dad, are you telling me that this game has dinosaurs that ride dinosaurs?" And I was like, "Yeah, buddy." And he was like, "Yes, I need this in my life." So we've walked through a little bit of very watered down games. My daughter and we walk through games a little bit. She's slowly picking it up, although she's still got to temper that, like, she gets real salty, right? Like, she gets angry because She doesn't understand the game completely yet, and we walk through it very slowly. But at the end of the game, when I've like got 20 points and she's got 3 or 10 or whatever, she's just like, "You cheated," blah 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 blah. Like baby fits. It's actually pretty funny watching the salt mine erupt. Uh, you know, it is what it is. She'll get there. She'll get her emotions under control about it, and she'll learn to accept that it is a game. And it's one of those, like, I tried to tell her, like, look, like, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but you are talking about one of the more skilled 40K players out there. You know, AOS is great. Yes, I agree. It's complex enough that you can do a lot of neat things, but it's much more straightforward in the way the rules seem to be applied. That's been my experience with it. So there's a lot less situations where you look at rules and you're like, I don't understand what is intended or what's supposed to happen here. So, and I do try to tell her, look, like I don't go and win all these tournaments, but I am a very high skilled 40K player. I know I am. And while it's not the same game, there's a lot of crossover because you're still moving models on a table and you're still positioning. So while a lot of the minutia is different, a lot of the overarching themes and concepts are similar. And she just doesn't want to hear that. Clearly, I'm just a cheater. So, again, just to kind of talk about my AOS journey, I happened to luck into some Sylvaneth. I managed to win a couple of local 40K tournaments, get store credit, and I was just like, man, I really love the trees, like specifically the wildwoods. And I used to play wood elves in fantasy, so it was just like, oh, I'll just get some wood elves or some trees. I like them; they're cool looking. Just as models, they're really neat. And then at some point picked up like a couple star collectings. Again, just from store credit that is accumulated from local tournaments and stuff. So it's one of those, like, it just kind of happened into 2,000 points of Sylvaneth. Now, it was the most generic, basic 2,000 points of Sylvaneth you can get, but it got me started. It got me out. I went to a couple of events. For everybody that's here right now, Lord Wellingstone in the chat is actually a AOS tournament organizer, and he is the spearhead of what is called South Bend Age of Sigmar. And honestly, Kevin, if you've got a YouTube channel or anything like that for your events organization or a website, feel free to drop it in the chat. They do great work. The tournaments are always very well run, very well organized. The community that he has strived to create is a very friendly community that's very fun first. You do have a little bit of that try hard with some of those guys, but you can't not have it with tournaments. Like, that's just part of competitive play. But what I will say is that even when I've played those players, awesome, awesome. Good to know. Even when I've played those players, like, we've still been able to have fun and have a good time. And literally my worst interaction was some dude getting mad at himself. And then after the game, we just sat and talked about it. And he was just like, honestly, man, like, I was just frustrated with myself. Uh, you know, this is what it is. And he's like, there's nothing against you. And we had a really good time anyway. He actually said that I won. I beat him. And he was like, I wouldn't have won if I wasn't having so much fun. So that made me feel good as a player that this guy still had fun, and that regardless of whether he won or lost, like, he could look up back on it and be like, that was still a fun game. So that was a really cool interaction I had with him. So again, I can, like, get off on tangents, but I just wanted to shout out Kevin, Lord Wellingstone, in the chat. And his community for putting on great events. They are fantastic. I love going to them. And yeah, so let's dig into we were talking about Sylvaneth, and I've enjoyed my time with the trees. I really did, and I still have them. My buddy Tyler bought a few of my dryads and one of my tree lords off of me, and I've already replaced a lot of it. It's one of those where it's a fun army, but there's something about it that was just missing, and it's probably because of the list that I was playing. As a Drukhari player, I like the glass cannon, very technical game, and Sylvaneth gave me half of that, and that I think is what the issue was. There was glass but no cannon, and again, when you're running 60, 70 dryads and 3 tree lords, it's probably what I'm bringing, not the army itself. But I just wanted to explore some other things. I've been kind of down on my orcs for about 2 editions now. The 8th edition book came out. Well, I started in 8th edition again, restarted 40k in 8th, and really enjoyed orcs in 8th edition. They were pretty fun. They had still some of that silliness, some of that zaniness that they used to have. Getting the exploding sixes all the time and your sixes always hit meant that even though shooting was never really good, it could be pretty silly. And if your dice were just super hot, it would be very spiky and could be bonkers. And it felt like orcs, right? The 9th edition book came out, and what I personally feel like has happened to that army from 8th to 9th was GW has slowly pulled some of the fun out to kind of normalize them for competitive play. You know, well, you don't get exploding sixes, but you get more consistent shots. Well, it's not what I played this army for. I played it because of the spikiness, right? Like when things are hot, they're hot, and when they're not, oh well. So it's one of those like, and then 9th to 10th, I just felt like a little bit more of that was stripped away, and I'm not down on it. I'm just saying that that's not the interaction I wanted specifically from that army. That's not why I started them in 8th, and that's not why I love them in 3rd, 4th, and 5th when I kind of played. So it's just one of those where the changes to the army had me kind of down on them. And I was like, hey, you know what? I think I'm going to trade these off and maybe pick up like something else. I don't know what. We'll see. But they've been sitting on my shelf for the better part of 2 years with like every once in a while I bust them out for tournaments. And I was just like, let's move them on to somebody who's going to enjoy them. Move them on to somebody who's going to play with them. There's no point in them sitting on my shelf collecting dust. So I put them up in my Discord channel, and man, within 24 hours, one of the other guys in our local community was like, hey, I've got so many Gloomspite gits. Excuse me. I will trade you straight up. And I was like, hey, man, I'm coming out way ahead in this trade. Are you sure? Like, I feel bad. And he said basically the same thing that I had said about the orcs, is that these have been sitting for years. I haven't touched them. I haven't painted them. I haven't done anything with them. They've just been in storage. I'd rather they go to somebody who's going to play with them and have fun with them, which is exactly where I was at with the orcs. So I was like, cool. We did the trade. Long story short, I'm now sitting on a massive Gloomspite Gits army, which has been a boon for 2 reasons. One, it's been an extremely fun army to play with. Two, a lot of this stuff is going to transfer directly over into Old World once that is fully released, and I've already pre-ordered my book and stuff, and now I have a full army that I can put on the table without having to do anything other than paint and then get movement trays so that I don't necessarily have to rebase everything. So I was pretty excited about that. And let me tell you, this is exactly what I was looking for, and I didn't even know it. There's a lot of fun and a lot of swinginess, and there's still a lot of technicality. And it's one of those where looking at Gloomspite Gits, they probably, to me, attract the same, what I would say, 2 types of players orcs attract for 40k, right? When you go to tournaments and you play 40k, there's 2 types of players that I've come across, and maybe I'm way off in this. This is just anecdotal, but there's 2 types of orc players when you exclude people who are hopping the meta. The first type is what probably most of you think of when you think of orc players, and that's that like loud, kind of boisterous, like really into orcs, has all his kit bashes and all the cool things that you see when you see orc players. And generally speaking, unless they're just getting hammered super, super hard, they're just having fun. Like everything's a good time, right? And then you get those that are really, really technical. And they tend to be a little bit more rare. But they exist, and those would be, and again, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but like that would be me, right? Like I love orcs, but I also just really enjoy being good at the game. And it's one of those where when you get those two together, like my buddy John is an extremely technical player, and he's very, very good, and he loves orcs, and he is one of the best Warhammer players I've ever played with or against. And so it's one of those where when you get those two together, that's such a rare. Those are, yeah, and that's what I thought. And it's one of those, like, you either have those guys who are just there to roll dice and have fun, or you have those guys who have that element of roll dice and have fun, but are just like really, really good at their positioning and stuff, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of middle ground. And I just envision that that's what Gloomspite gets probably also attracts. Right? You'll get those guys who are just like, oh my gosh, goblins are just fun, and I love rolling the dice with the goblins and the squigs and everything. And then you get those guys who are like myself or like John, who like these armies for the fun, but also look at it and go, there's a lot of really interesting and potentially good things here. And I'm not as experienced with Sigmar to really be able to put it together just yet. But I definitely see a lot of potential for Gloomspite to be like competitively a solid and good army. They'll not dominate, and I don't want an army to dominate, but you'll definitely, if you're a skilled player, be able to win a lot more than you lose with this army. Now that we've had this massively long introduction, let's dig into the list. First of all, it was oops all squigs. That's basically what it was. Everything I had was a squig. Let me turn my screen timer off so that I can continue to look at it. I didn't build the list on the computer. Thanks, man. And we're going to go over that round 2 a little bit. I'm not going to name drop anybody or anything, but we are going to talk about the mistakes I made round 2 and why that drastically changes a whole lot of things with even just how that event comes out, Timeout. There we go. Let's turn that up. And I am scoring, right? Like, that is the main thing. You are right. I am scoring, and we're going to go over that in a minute. So, Loon Boss on Giant Cave Squigs. So everybody knows I did have a core battalion regiment. I was only 4 drops, and that was one of the things I realized after my first 2 events was, like, having fewer drops is potentially a lot better. That being said, with this specific list, I don't think it mattered because of the way I wanted to play them. I don't think going first or second mattered for me with this list. So let's look up this handsome fella, Loon Boss on Giant Cave Squig. And so I spoke to the TO. They were cool with me using some older models as long as they're on the right size bases. So let's take a look at one of mine. This is him. He's handsome. I don't know what he actually is, but he's an older Forge World model. He's resin, and he does have a chainsword, right? Like, and that was cool. It's like I was still able to be WYSIWYG. I had 2 of those, one with the sword and one with the lance. Why did I bring them? Let's look at that. These guys, first of all, their attack profile is pretty solid. If the squigs get 4 attacks, and then because I took Jaws of Mork, everything gets a bonus attack on the charge. So the squigs will swing 5 attacks. They hit on 4s, they wound on 3s, neg 1, D3. All the squig stuff hits on 4s for the most part, except for the really, really big ones like the manglers. So that's one of those where, whatever, it is what it is. I can all-out attack them. That's fine, too. So they swing 4 attacks, 4s and 3s, neg 1, D3 damage. And then the rider either gets the kata, which is 5 attacks, 3s and 3s, neg 1, 2 damage, or the stabba, which is 4 attacks, 4s and 3s, but the stabba gets the lance rule, so it's bonus rend, bonus damage on the charge. But what's really cool about him is that he gets to chain activate in the fight phase. So when he fights, if there's a Boingrot's Bounders unit within 3 inches of him and wholly within 12 of him, if they haven't fought, they can fight immediately after he fights. And honestly, like, that was really, really relevant and useful for a lot of reasons. Not only because I could immediately be like, I'm charging, I'm fighting, and just maximize the amount of damage I could output. It also created some interesting conundrums in the fight phase when my opponents were like, well, you charged with a Mangler, and then you also charged with the Boingrots and the Cave Squig. Who do I fight against first? Because they're both going to do a lot of damage, and you're going to be able to chain activate and really put a lot of damage on me. So it's one of those where it was really interesting to have that interaction. And once I saw it on the table, because to be fair, like some of this stuff, when I went to the tournament, this was the first time I put it on the table in combination. Like I put Boingrots on the table, but I never put Boingrots on the table with the Cave Squig. So it's one of those where seeing that interaction on the table for the first time was like, okay, I see a lot of potential to try to control the fight phase, even if I'm not getting the maximum amount of damage output. So overall, like, because of what I ran, he's pretty solid. I would run him again. And honestly, most of this list I would just run again now that I've seen it on the table and I kind of see how it interacts. All right, we need to go back. So we had 2 of those, and then we had this handsome feller. Loon Boss on a Mangler. Man, this thing, so fun. 14 wounds, moves 10 inches, plus a d6. Its movement does bracket. If I remember right. Maybe it doesn't. Let's go. Yep, it does. And we'll look at its brackets in a minute. If you've not looked at this thing, it's hilarious. Moves 10 inches plus a d6. He's got huge fang-filled gobs. They are 4 attacks. They are 3s and 3s in his top bracket, and they are neg 1 d6 damage. I did give him the gold cap teeth. I think it's like the gold tooths or something. I don't remember exactly what it's called. Loonstone teeth caps. That's what it is. Which gives all of his squig attacks, which is just the fang-filled gobs, an additional point of rend. So they were neg 2. In retrospect, I don't think I give him that. I believe I can replace that with something. I'm trying to remember what it's called. I'll just look. The Loonstone teeth caps. Maybe it wasn't that. It wasn't that. But there was something I thought about replacing that with, I believe. I don't remember what it was. Doesn't matter. The Leering Git Shield. Because the Leering Git Shield, if I remember right, is all your hit rolls of 1 do a mortal wound back to you. Yep. So if you target him with attacks and you roll any hit rolls of 1, each hit roll of 1 does a mortal wound back to your attacking unit. And then if he's slain by an attack made by an enemy unit, that enemy unit subtracts 1 from all its hit rolls for the rest of the game. So I do think that's one change I make. I don't think having Rend 2 really mattered in most of my games for him on that one specific attack. And obviously there's going to be games where it does matter. But it just like, by and large, I just didn't feel like Rend 2 was that important in most situations. And then I gave him Fight Another Day, which is crazy good. After he completes a fight, he can immediately move 2d6 inches, but has to end that movement outside of engagement range of enemy models. And I only had one game where that did not do what I needed it to do. And that was my final game. It was against the Soulblight Gravelords player. We had a lot of fun. Her name's Cheryl. We had a blast. When I went to fall back, when I went to make my fight another day roll against her vampire, I rolled a 3. And I needed a 4. And so she was able to still pile in and prevent me from doing some of the other things I had wanted to do that on my next turn. So it's one of those where that was the only time. Every other time, that in conjunction with the squig monstrous rampage that you get access to, he was moving. We'll talk about all of that in just a little bit. But again, the bastion sticks, whatever, they're just like chip damage, doesn't matter. But the moon cutter is really good. The balls and chains are really good. Everything hits on 3s, wounds on 3s. My triumph was once per game +1 to wound. And then he has a once per game pick a squig unit wholly within 18. They get +1 to wound. They all explode. Like, these things are awesome. I love them. I think they're hilarious. I ran 4 total manglers in my list. It was him plus 3 regulars. And probably not like the most competitive thing out there, but it was so fun and so funny. That being said, we're going to move on to my battle lines because that will be all my leaders. We already talked about the behemoths. It was just 3 manglers. We don't need to go through their profile because their profile is exactly the same as the Loon Boss, except they don't have the Loon Boss attacks. I had 2 units of 5 Boingrots. Also, just a really solid unit. Again, that's why I had the 2 Cave Squigs, is so that I could have 2 units of Boingrots and a unit of Cave Squigs with each unit of Boingrots. All in all, really good. They do have Lance attacks, 2 each, and they are 4s and 3s at -1/1 damage with a Lance bonus of additional rend, additional damage. So if they charge, they can put out quite a bit of damage. Again, the hitting on 4s is kind of like, but again, you can always just all-out attack them from your Cave Squigs if you need them to. And then they get 3 attacks with the Fang-filled Gobs, but they get 4 on the charge. So again, when you charge, you can put out quite a bit of damage. The one change I'd probably make is I'd probably, instead of running 2 units of 5, I'd probably run 1 unit of 10. If I really wanted to, I could run a 2x10, I think. But then I'm talking about dropping a Mangler, which isn't necessarily wrong. It's just we're changing the list drastically at this point. But overall, these were really good. They're 2 wounds each, 4-up save. And then when they charge, you roll a die for every model in this unit, in the Boingrots unit. And on a 4-up, your opponent takes a mortal, which would be another reason to take a unit of 10. You can get more dice on the charge to try to do more damage. And that was something I missed talking about with the Manglers. When the Manglers charge, you roll a number of dice equal to the number of models in your opponent's unit, and every 4-up is a mortal, but it caps at 10. And again, pretty solid. Good damage, good out-of-phase damage output potential, especially if you're running into, like, hordes, which round 1, I hit, this guy had some bigger bricks of mortals, but we'll talk about that. But all the squigs did a ton of damage. Really good. And then I took 2 squig herds. And because I can't read, I had 2 units of 10, not 2 units of 12. Because you get 10 squigs plus 2 of the herders. And my dumbass took 8 squigs plus the 2 herders. So I was short 4 wounds in those units every game. It just is what it is. Also, just a really fun and solid unit. They don't stay on the table, but you don't necessarily want them to, and we'll talk about why in a minute. The Squig Prodders, which is the herder, is just 2 attacks, 5s and 5s. Nothing to write home about. The Fangfill Gobs, though, 3 attacks each, strength 3, neg 1, 1 damage, 4s and 3s, and then bonus attack on the charge because they're squigs. So if I had all 10 of them when they charge, that's 40 dice coming out of that unit. That is a lot. With a, 4s and 3s, you're talking about averaging, like 14 neg 1s every time they swing? That's pretty good. And then every time when you roll a bravery check, when they flee, every model that flees, you roll a die, and on a 3-up, the closest enemy unit within 9 inches of that model suffers 1 mortal wound. And I'll be damned if that wasn't hilarious and scored me a lot of points. And again, we'll kind of get into that. This unit cannot receive commands. However, at the start of your hero phase, you can roll 1 die for each squig herder. Every 2-up puts a D3 back. I always forgot to do that. Again, this was literally the first time I put a squig herd on the table. Maybe the second. Maybe the first time was with my kids. But it's one of those, ultimately, it's just repetition. Knowing your rules is just repetition. So as I get more games in, I won't forget. And then I had a Loon Shrine. And the Loon Shrine, first of all, it's just super cool looking. I love this thing. Absolutely love it. It's a fantastic piece of terrain. That is one thing I will say that Sigmar has over 40k 100% hands down, is that the terrain is just better. It looks better. It interacts better. Everything is better. Give me 1 second. I got to check this. All right. There we go. So that's the list. My grand strategy was Slaughter of Sorceries. So, what is that? I know it's killing you, wizards, but I can't remember if you can't have one. When the battle ends, if there are no wizard units on the battlefield, which I didn't have any, so it didn't matter for me. So I just thought, you know what? This is kind of designed to do damage. Let's just do damage to wizards and hope we do it. And I will say that this is the first time, first of all, this is the first time in a tournament I've even scored a grand strategy, and I scored it every game. So hooray for me, right? I'm learning. And yeah, that was the main thing. So we talked about the Loon Shrine. We talked about the grand strategy. All territories, blah, 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 blah. What this does, though, is it lets you on a 4-up at the end of your turn, you can revive. Right? You can bring a unit back at half strength. They have to be wholly within 12 of the Loon Shrine, but 3 inches away from enemy units. Not 9. 3. And then any of your units that are wholly within 12, and it doesn't even say holy. It just says Gloomspite gets, I should say. It doesn't say yours. It says Gloomspite gets. So your opponents theoretically would also. I don't know if there's a core rule that says otherwise. I would have to learn that. But the way that's worded is if you have a mirror match, you're both just getting everybody's moonshine, right? So, man. 3 inches, though. 3 inches. And we're going to talk about why that's important right now. Because we're going to start going into the games. Games. Oh, no, I'm not signed in. We're not going to talk about the games. We will, but we're not going to do it here. I'll just pull it up here. I had planned on having it up here, but I forgot I wasn't signed in. Let me see if I can actually just sign this in real quick. Boop. That would be even better, because I'd rather just show you guys everything. Battles. Let me pull it up here. Yeah, laugh it up, man. Laugh it up. I'm laughing. I think it's hilarious. Let's see. Settings. Account. Okay. We're going to pull this off the screen while I sign in. Close that out, and you get to look at my background. Maybe. Uh-oh. I think BlueStacks just said no. Oh, there it goes. Oh, I get a sign in. There it is. Boop. There we go. Let's bring it on over. There I am. Look at me go. Games. Here we go. Let's start with game 1 against John. I did win this game. Let's talk about this. All right. We're not gonna, like I said, we're not gonna dig into it too crazy deep. Let me turn my screen timer down again. I just want to kind of go over what worked and what didn't, and stuff like that. So I got priority because, like I said, I only had like 4 drops. I got to pick who went first and who went second. I chose to go first. Sorry, I'm still kind of getting used to BlueStacks here. I don't use it too often, but I have a touch screen and I got to remember that. Okay, so turn 1 got my 2. Turn 2 got 1. Turn 3 got 2. Turn 4 got 1. I didn't score anything on turn 5 for the objectives, what we would in 40K call primaries, controlling objectives. Right? And that was controlling the activated. And then Wizards killed. He had 1 because he had Be'lakor. He was playing a Khorne list with Be'lakor. And it was like Khorne. It was like 3 Bloodthirsters and Be'lakor, and then just a bunch of mortals. And it was an interesting list. It was funny. I had a blast playing with him. I told him up front, I was like, look, man, I am going to be a little bit late because there's pre-orders that I got to do, and they go live basically like when this tournament starts. And I've got to do them for Old World. And I'm really sorry. And he was very amicable about it. You know, I talked to him about it up front. And he was just like, no, I get it, man. That's fine. I will say we started a half hour after everybody, and we finished a half hour early. 2-hour game. I'm about it. I did kill Be'lakor in turn 4. We're going to get into that because that was one of the most goblin things that could have happened. I scored all my battle tactics that game, and then I did get my Slaughter of Sorcery because I did kill Be'lakor. And then I don't know what Overshadow is. I don't remember, but I know he didn't score it. Can we look that up? I can't look it up because I don't have that book. Age Sigmar. Let me see if I can look it up. All enemy battle line units from your opponent's starting army. And he did not. He did not kill them all. He came pretty close, but he did not kill them all. I still had some Boingrots on the table, if my memory serves. It was either Boingrots or regular Squigs. But, yeah, he just couldn't get them all. Yep. Thanks. I appreciate it, man. And so the big funny thing about this is Magical Mayhem, he didn't score because I was able to do a heroic action to get a deny, and I denied his spell. Or not. No. No, that's Magical Dominance. Magical Mayhem, he couldn't score because he just wasn't able to kill a unit. He did a D3 mortal wounds with his what's that thing? I can't think of what it's called. Arcane Bolt. And rolled a 1. So basically what happened is Be'lakor charged in. He whiffed killing some squigs. And the squigs put a ton of damage on him. And like he just like killed a few and then got knocked down to 1 wound. Because I had already hit Be'lakor with something else previously. And I forget what. It might have been a mangler. Doesn't matter. Uh, and this is where the game really just took a hard turn. Like it was really, really like could be anybody's game. And then in turn 4, when he took Magical Mayhem and he wasn't able to kill anything, and then I failed my bravery check, and then the grots or the squigs exploded, killing Be'lakor. And when they killed Be'lakor, that got me my grand strategy. And it also got me the extra point for killing a wizard. So him not getting Magical Mayhem for that 2 points, like had he got it because he killed the squigs, that also basically shuts down, what, 5 of my points? 4 of my points? So that becomes he gets 16, I'm at 15, and it's really still anybody's game. But once that chain of events happened, it was just like, that's it. This is the game. There's nothing that can be done about it. And it was just one of those like weird sequence of events, and it was probably one of the weirdest things to happen to seal a game. And those squigs exploding on failed bravery killed multiple characters that game, or that tournament. And it was so funny. Absolutely a hilarious interaction. I'm like, I'm just going to send them. You're going to kill some. I'm going to fail a bravery, and you're going to take extra damage. That's what we're doing. So it's one of those, like, it did not take me long to figure out how to use that squig herd effectively. Because 3-up is pretty consistent. You're going to get it. And if 2 models flee, you're going to effectively always do 1 mortal wound. Again, very, very nice guy. Enjoyed playing with him. Had a lot of fun. Very positive experience. All right, so round 2. I get a rematch against Kevin E. Played Kevin at the last tournament, and I think we tied, but I beat him because I scored more battle tactics than him, and neither of us got our grand strategies. So it was like a 20-20 tie or something silly, and I just barely eked a win out. So like this was a good rematch, and he was the guy that I told you, like, hey man, I lost because I was just having too much fun and lost track of where we were. This was a wild game, and this is where knowing my rules I would have actually won this game. And it's not I could have, it's I would have. But I made a mistake. I didn't look up my own rules, and my mistake was in his favor. Because I was thinking that you had to be 9 inches away from the Loon Shrine, or 9 inches away from enemy models when you come in from the Loon Shrine, but it's only 3. So he was able to screen me out from coming in from the Loon Shrine, and he used Kragnos multiple times to try to stomp my Loon Shrine, or whatever, raise it, whatever the actual term is, and he failed both of them, and I made both of my regeneration rolls, but he had me screened out. And so what ended up happening, and he didn't have me screened out with a lot, but what ended up happening was it shut off this battle tactic. It prevented me from scoring 1 point in primaries for 3 points. And then I could have absolutely scored another battle tactic, right? Like guaranteed could have scored a battle tactic. So that's 5 points that I left on the table. Okay, you. First time chat. Oh, yeah, we don't want this, buddy. We want. Sorry, I'm looking at this little chat thingy, and we don't want that in there. Get out of here. I don't want your spam. So that, like I said, that's 5 points that I left on the table because I didn't play my Loon Shrine properly, and that's my fault. And there's nothing he could have done about it. And it's one of those, like, in retrospect, that's 5 points I didn't score, and because I didn't score them, he won guaranteed. That's right. That's right. But had I made those 5 points, I don't know what the tiebreaker is. If it's battle tactics first and then, but it wouldn't have mattered because, like I said, like I would have 100% scored intimidate the invaders, and then there was nothing he could have done. I wouldn't have taken bait and trap. It's just I didn't have anything I could score because I thought I was screened out. But I would have had 5 battle tactics and a grand strategy. So again, it would have been another situation. Thank you. I thought it was tactics first, but it would have been another situation where it was I would have had the tiebreaker. We would have tied on points, and I would have had the tiebreaker. And that's assuming I I actually would have had one additional point because I could have been on the objective. Because how I had placed the Loon Shrine, I was able to revive units on the objective. So it's just one of those, like, these are things I need to know because that's potentially actually 6 points I leave on the table, and then I don't even have to worry about tiebreakers. So these are one of those, like, man, I walked away from that game going, crap, I should actually be 2-1. But again, I wasn't mad because I lost. I wasn't even mad that I misplayed the thing. It was just one of those, like, you silly goose. Had a blast playing with him again. Like, we had a lot of fun. And one of the things I do enjoy about playing with Kevin is that after the game, he and I can talk it out. And we can go, okay, this is probably what, did it. And we hit turn 2. And if the scores won't really reflect it. But we hit turn 2. And I won priority. And it was like, okay, do I go first or second? And I was like, well, I guess I'm going to go first. And arguably, I could have went second, and it would have been fine. He could have charged me with Kragnos, but he was only going to hit maybe one unit. And I was set up for a really hard countercharge. But what I did instead is, because the moon was in the middle of the table, I was like, man, do we just full commit? And Kevin looked at me, and he was like, are you serious right now? And I'm like, bro, I'm here for the memes. I think we just full send. And I had... in his deployment zone, I had 3, I think, of my manglers and 2 units of Boingrots, and I was set up for like 5 6-inch charges. And wouldn't you know it, I failed every single one of them except for one. And we got done with that charge phase, and he just kind of looked at me as like, I don't know what to tell you, man. And I was like, I'm not mad. I knew this was a risk when I did it. This was one of those where it was like, oh, well. And I was still, even his charge killed a lot of my stuff, and I was still able to score points anyway. So it wasn't like it knocked me out of the game. It just really made it an uphill battle. And I will say, like, we got done, and one of the things he did say to me, and I do take this as a very big compliment, because he seems to be, in my limited experience with the game, he seems to be a very high-skilled player. And he was like, it is not going to be too much longer before you are really just wrecking house. Right? And that's it, man. If I'd have made even out of the, I think it was, let's see, 3 Manglers, 2 Boingrots, and 2 Cave Squigs for a total of 7 charges, I make 3 of those. It is a drastically different game. And I even used the command point to re-roll one of them, and it was just like the dice were just like, nah, man, that's not what we're doing today. So, oh well, it is what it is. And honestly, had I made the charges on the one side of the board, because that's basically what happened, was like I had charges on one corner of the board and charges on the other corner of the board. And honestly, had I made charges on the one corner of the board, I don't think I'd even rolled them on the other side. So I'd have just let him kind of come into me and do damage, but I'd have had stuff on the other side of the board to kind of collapse down. But like I said, I took that as a big compliment. He was just like, man, it's not going to be too much longer. And you're going to be a handful, right? And I learned quick, and that's the main thing. So, again, had a great time. The standout moment from this game was how I scored my grand strategy. So he had his wizard. And I'm cracking up just thinking about this. He charges me. He countercharges me because I failed all those charges. He gets out of position to where he can't bodyguard shrug damage off of his wizard, which ultimately isn't the end of the world because he's going to kill stuff, and I'm probably not hitting that hard into him at this point. Plus, his army does a lot of similar things to what my army does. So he's going to charge. He's going to do mortal wounds on the charge. So to be fair, he's killing some things before I even get to fight, right? Before we even enter the fight phase. So he charges, kills a mangler. It explodes. His wizard takes 3 mortals. Kragnos takes 2 or 3 mortals. He kills another one. It explodes. His wizard takes another 3 mortals. Kragnos shrugs one of the mortals, ends up taking 1 or 2 damage. He's got to roll his scream or roar or whatever it is for all these units. Literally the only one that he succeeds on is into his wizard and rolls another 3 mortals. So in one sequence of events, he kills a squig, it blows up, does damage to his wizard and Kragnos, kills a squig, it blows up, does damage to his wizard. Kragnos screams. The only thing it does damage to is his wizard. His wizard dies. His grand strategy is shut off because he took spellcasting savant. My grand strategy has automatically succeeded because his wizard's dead. And I am just cracking up so hard at the whole series of events. And he's laughing. You could tell there's a part of him that's just like, man, this is some dumb shit. But at the same time, he's able to just laugh it off and roll with it. And again, it's those interactions that just have made this army so fun for me. Is every game I've had some extremely ridiculous just goblin thing happen, and it's been amazing. Right? We can kill things, but we have to do it in the most complicated, indirect way possible. Now that's going to lead us into our last game, and I don't have the right score on here because my phone died partially through. The main thing is going to be the takeaways here, where this was a very skeleton-heavy list. I'd only played against vampires with Soul Blights. My buddy Austin runs Soul Blights when we get our reps in, and he's got it's all vampires and the Vargeists or whatever they are. It's a very elite list with Blood Knights, and he runs Castelai, I think it's called. So they just get better when they kill things, if I remember right. That being said, I didn't know how to approach this game because I knew things were going to come back, and I just didn't know what the best approach was going to be. So I played this game with a similar strategy as to how I played the other two, and it didn't work. And the main takeaway was that it's because I couldn't control objectives. Like, I scored battle tactics, I scored my grand strategy, I scored points. I think it was only like a 4 or 5 point game. I think our final was like 18 to 20 or 18 to 22, somewhere in there. It wasn't a huge margin of victory. And it came down to I just couldn't control objectives. And what I should have done, what I did was I basically had a symmetrical deployment where I had my Loon Boss in the middle, and then Manglers in the flanks, and then a unit of Boingrots and a unit of Boingrots, and I was very symmetrical. And what I should have done is I should have loaded up on one side. I should have just been like, this side is mine. You don't get to have it. And then I should have just taken that side of the table and then just collapsed down. And if you've ever watched my Drukhari videos, right, like, you know that that is how I approach Drukhari. I don't spread out. I focus on half the table. I try to clear out half the table. And then once I have that foothold, that's when I start working my way down in waves. And that's really what I should have done this game. Big, funny, key moments here. First of all, unfortunately, her zombie dragon died very early. And that was just bad dice on her part. She planted it in the middle of the board. And it didn't really do anything. Like, the damage output wasn't as high as I expected from it. But what I will say happened was then it got countercharged by Boingrots and a Cave Squig. And that was it. That's all I charged it with. And that's mostly because I forgot it had a 3-up Ethereal. And so I was just like, yeah, let's go do some damage. The Cave Squig with the Lance does 3 damage on the charge. And wouldn't you know it, she failed, I think, every 3-up Ethereal he put on her. And every ward save. So she had already taken a mortal wound from something, I forget what. And then just 8, 9, or 12 damage from the Cave Squig. And again, I don't remember what the math was exactly. But so she was already in a bad spot. And then I chained the Boingrots, and they just, through weighted dice, got the rest of it. Like, you know, when you're rolling 4 attacks times 5 is 20, like, you're going to put enough wounds on something that, like, they just can't make them all. And that's exactly what it came down to. Is like, she just couldn't make them all. I all-out attacked the Boingrots, if I remember right. One of them got an all-out attack, and then one of them got my Triumph, just to kind of maximize the amount of damage I could put on them. And it ended up working. And again, she just had shitty saves, too, and that didn't help anything. But, you know, so they die, or that died very early. And it's one of those, like, I also managed to do mortals on the charge with the Boingrots, and that helped kind of, like, whittle it down. So it did die. That being said, I think it was the vampire, but I don't remember. But one of her characters got killed to an squigs. You know, she killed some squigs. It might have been the necromancer. I don't remember. But she killed some squigs, and it was pretty funny. I failed. Oh, it was her hex. No, not the hex wraith. It was the White King on the horse, skeletal steed. Killed some squigs. Failed the leaderships or braveries. Did enough that she just picked that dude up, and she was just like, oh. And then one of the other things was she made a spicy 9-inch charge with her Black Knights, and my brain was just like, Soul Blight, those must be Blood Knights. Like, she told me what they were, but my brain was just like, Soul Blight, Blood Knights, I know what those do. And then she was like, all right, I'm going to roll like 20 dice and 3-ups or mortals or something like that. And I was like, those are not Blood Knights. And she was like, nope. And I was like, no, you told me. I'm just an idiot sometimes. And she started laughing. And so, like, I was expecting this unit to come in, not really do anything on the charge, and then just, like, roast me when she fought. And that's not how that worked. That being said, when I countercharged them with a Mangler, that was a kind of an eye-opening experience for her. Not because she didn't know what they did. I'm guessing, I don't know how many Gloom Spites are in that local meta or community, but I'm guessing most of them don't run 4 Manglers. And I was just like, this is what we're doing. So when those Manglers were just like, here's D6 damage into your Black Knights, and then those Black Knights just evaporated, she was just like, oh. So yeah, all in all, again, super fun game. Walked away from it having learned a ton again. And that's always the goal, right? I don't necessarily care in the long term about, like, man, I got to win. I would like to win more than one, but we're getting there, right? Like, we're definitely getting there. I feel like I found the army that really fits how I want the game to play. And now it's just kind of fine-tuning. Yeah, and I'll probably keep doing it too, buddy. It was just too much fun. I did consider dropping it down to 3, because there were times where I was like, man, I wish I had Fanatics. But all in all, like, the 4 Manglers were absolutely fun. And even when they died, I never really felt like I was out of the game. I might go down to 3 just so I can bring some more Squig Herds or some more Boingrots. Because that to me is like the only tweak I really feel like I need to make. And I probably would change the Relic and Warlord trait that I put on my Warlord, simply because I want to try some different things. So, but no, it was a blast. Absolute blast. I had so much fun. I'm sure I was the absolute loudest person there besides Kevin, you. Because there were definitely times where I could hear you, and I'm sure there were times everybody could hear me. And if you don't know, like, I'm a pretty high energy guy. If you guys are watching and you don't know, like, I'm pretty high energy. And when I'm like at a tournament, I'm even like, because I'm all ramped, I'm ready to go. I want to play. Like, I'm here to play. Let's do it. So I felt bad because, again, like round 1, my first time playing against this dude, John, and I'm just like all over the place bouncing around and stuff. And this dude is just like, he looks exhausted just from watching me. And I'm just like, yeah, let's go. So, but no, again, I learned a lot. I've got some things kind of figured out with the army. I've got some things that I want to test run. But I think if I were to do another Sigmar event, as long as the TO allows me, I'll bring 3 Manglers. And the reason I say allows me is because this TO let me run my Colossal Squigs. Yeah, I'm going to touch back on that in a minute. I've got 2 Colossal Squigs that are Legends, and the TO was generous enough to let me run them as Manglers, because I have 2, and I have 2 Colossal Squigs, and I actually have 3. The other one's just not built, and they're about the same size. So he was just like, yeah, that's fine. They're about the same size. You got them on the right base. That's cool. And as long as the TOs are willing to let me do it, I'll keep running 4 Manglers because it's funny. I could tell. I could tell that Cheryl was not ready for what she got to the table with. And I remember Sean even saying, like, man, this is either going to be really good for her or really bad for her. Because I am a high energy individual, especially, like I said, when I'm at events. I don't even have to be playing, even just running them. I am just like go, 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 go. And I've always been a fairly high energy person, which is part of the reason, like, working out and exercising is such an integral part of my routine. If I skip that, like, I get real impatient and antsy, and I'm just like, I got to do something. So it's like, that's why first thing in the morning, one of the first things I do is like go for a walk, lift some weights, do stuff like that. But yeah, no, yeah, I definitely got that. Like, I was waiting for her to just be like, bro, I need you to either calm down or shut up for 5 minutes. But she didn't, and she could have, and that would have been fine. You know, I usually let people know when we get to a table, like, hey, man, I'm sorry. I'm high energy. I know I am. If it gets to a point where it's too much, you just got to say something. Otherwise, I'm just going to be this way. Like, I am mindful enough to try to, like, rein it in if it's making people uncomfortable. So it's like, and I've had a couple guys that are just like, man, like, there's nothing wrong with it, but it is exhausting to watch. Because, like, I stand for all my games. I don't sit. I cannot sit and play Warhammer. I have a hard time in sitting and playing Blood Bowl. Like, I have to be up, I have to be moving, because those games are so long that I just have to kind of keep going. So, all right, we talked about that. There was a couple other things I wanted to touch on, and they all had to do with this army, right? Because this army is hilarious, and well, that's not the right button. I love it. I absolutely love it. Oh, we're not making stop motion videos right now. We can close all this out. That's probably part of the reason it was going so long. So I wanted to kind of touch on these guys real quick. We're not going to go over every individual data sheet. I will do a video kind of going over these data sheets, but I wanted to kind of go over some of my favorites that I've seen so far. Reference. And at this point, I've been through pretty much all of them. But I'm always, as I go back through them and go back through them, finding different things. First of all, I'm not going to look at any of the trolls today. I think most people probably know the trolls, at least by, like, reputation. My understanding is the trolls are kind of like the competitive hotness for this army. Not that they're, like, competitively good, but that's what people who are running this army competitively tend to run. You know, they have a lot of resiliency. They can do some damage output. They have some neat layering and stuff. So we're not going to touch on them a ton. Just because from my understanding and just talking with the community, that's what most people are already going to know. So what we will do, though, is we're going to talk about this cave shaman, or shaman, whichever you like. Dude's awesome. And if I were going to run a wizard, which I probably will at some point, this would be it. His melee is actually pretty solid at neg 1-2 damage. Yes, he hits on 3s and wounds on 4s, but when compared to some of the other options for wizards in this army, he's pretty good. And he gets some vicious teeth attacks, right? I need to look and see if those are affected by the Jaws of Mork. I'm not going to do it right now, but I need to, because I didn't even think about that. I didn't have him in my list. It didn't matter. But that is a squig attack, but it calls out which squig attacks. It doesn't just say attacks from squigs. It's like this attack, and this attack. So it's one of those, like, I need to see. But on a 4-up at the start of your hero phase, he gives you an additional command point, which isn't bad. Anything that gives you more command points isn't bad. I have found that I don't seem to need them as much in Sigmar as I do in 40k. Not because they're bad or good. It's because they don't tend to have the devastating combination effects that 40k stratagems have. A lot of the Sigmar command abilities, from my experience so far, seem to be a lot more about positioning and utility than here's my devastating 1 command point, 2 command point combo that's going to make you pick everything up. Now, I'm not saying those don't exist in Sigmar. I'm just saying that by and large, this has been my experience with the game. Like, in my limited experience, I've seen more people use command abilities to redeploy or all-out defense than I've seen like some weird thing where they're just like, ha, I get to do this and you die. His spells that he comes with, right? He's got Spore Maws. It goes off on a 7. It has a 6-inch range. Every enemy unit suffers D6 mortal wounds within that range. Man, if you can get him that close, that's pretty good. He's not like crazy good because like 6 inches is 6 inches. Like, it's okay. But he's not like crazy good, right? But he has access to the regular stuff, and Itchy Nuisance is really good. You pick an enemy unit within, I believe it's 18. It's either 18 or 24. We're going to say it's 18. And then that enemy unit fights last. And that's awesome. I have already seen how good fights first and fights last is, just to, again in my limited experience, and that's great. And there's another one called Nick It. You cast it, and then you pick an enemy unit within 18, and it does D3 mortal wounds. And then if your natural roll was 10 or higher, if they have an artifact, their artifact breaks. And again, I don't think it's like crazy good, but it's really funny. And then once per game, he can use a Death Cap Mushroom, which lets him cast an additional spell. Also pretty solid because he only casts one. He was one. We already talked about the Squigs, so we're not going to touch on them again. The Madcap Shaman was okay. These are ones I want to get into, is the spider stuff. I want to look at more of this stuff because I think this has a lot of competitive potential. And maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like it does. And we'll talk about why here. Let me pull up my... Man, that is so many notifications. That's horrible. I know what I'm going to be doing while I eat lunch. I need Battle Scribe. It's one of those where I should buy the book. I really should. And if I knew when in 4th their Battle Tome came out, I would. Like, if I knew it was going to be a mid to late book, I would hands down just buy it right now. But I don't know if Sigmar has like a pattern, because 40K doesn't. They just kind of do things all willy-nilly. So I just assume that they do things all willy-nilly. All right, so view. Let's take a look. They've got one of their allegiances focuses on the spiders the way they've got the one that focuses on the squigs. And I think another reason this army really appeals to me is that it interacts very similarly to Drukhari in a lot of ways. Like, you have these, it's basically an army made up of sub-armies. And you can soup them all, and they'll have limited bonuses, but you can mitigate the strengths and weaknesses of each other. Or you can lean super hard into one and, like, maximize the strengths, but then you have glaring weaknesses. So that one is, let me see. Let me view this. I think I hit the wrong button. We need Grim Scuttle. Give me a second. And that's what it's called. Grim Scuttle. Or not. That's fine. It's cool. I didn't want to talk about it anyway, guys. We'll just pull it up over here. Boop. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Because Grim Scuttle is... There we go. During deployment, if any friendly Grim Scuttle Arachnaroks have been set up in ambush as reserves units, using the Ambush from Beyond ability, instead of setting up another friendly Grimscuttle Spiderfang unit, you can place it to one side and say that it will join a friendly Grimscuttle, blah, 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 blah. So you can basically put 2 additional units into reserves when you use the Arachnarok's ability to go into reserves. And then, when they're set up on the table for the first time, all units that joined it set up wholly within 12 of it and more than 9 inches. So, you can place... So I'm going to read this real quick. During blah, blah, blah. Instead of setting up another friendly Grimscuttle Spiderfang unit, you can place that unit to one side and say it will join a friendly Arachnarok in ambush as a reserve unit. Up to 2 units can join each Arachnarok. So you can put two Spiderfang units in reserves per Arachnarok, and then they have to be 12 inches, wholly within 12 and 9 inches from other enemy units, which means you could really spread them out as long as you have the positioning. I thought they had something that interacted with their venom, but they might not, and that's okay. It might have been just like an artifact. But what they also get is venom. Spiderfang. While Spiderfang units are affected by the light of the Bad Moon, their Spiderfang Venom ability causes mortal wounds on an unmodified roll of 5 instead of 6. And then, if the unmodified hit roll, these are hit rolls, made by this model is a 6, it causes 2 mortal wounds and the attack sequence ends. So it's one of those... and it's any of its attacks. So in melee, you're going to have 8 attacks, right? Because you have the spear and the fangs. And it doesn't, because it doesn't say for the spear or the fangs, it just says an attack, you'll get it on both. Let me find this. There we go. So it's one of those, you're going to average 2 mortal wounds. And sure, the attack sequence ends. But averaging 2 mortal wounds is better than averaging 0, right? And then once per battle at the end of the combat phase, you can say this unit will order his warriors to scuttle away. If you do so, you can pick one friendly Spider Rider unit wholly within 12. This unit and the unit you pick can retreat one after the other in the order of your choice. So that's also really cool. Once per game, they can go in, they can swing, and then they can beat feed out, or if you get charged, you can kind of beat feed out and prevent some extra damage from going on you. That's really cool. And then when this model makes a move, it basically is treated as if it flies for terrain. And that's what I want to look at some of these spider ones. This is going to be one of the last things we do, and then we're going to wrap this up. Let's talk about the Web Spinner Shaman. Let's see, because we need to go back to here. Because he gets the lore of the Spider Fangs. And his veins are thick with venom. So he's got the Spider God Staff. It's a single attack. So his melee is... And this is what I mean. The Fungoid Shaman has pretty solid melee when you compare it to what the other wizards in this army get. He has a 5-up ward. And he can cast and unbind 1. And then he has Speed of the Spider God as a spell. Has a casting value of 4 and a range of 24. You pick one friendly Spider Fang unit. Until your next hero phase, that unit can run and still shoot and or charge later in the turn. Run and charge seems to be very rare in this game. Again, from my perspective, it's very limited. And run and shoot also seems to be pretty rare. And then if it's 8 or more, you can pick D3 units instead of 1. And that doesn't say unmodified. So you can modify that with a primal die right now, or one of your, I think it's artifacts, gives you a +1 to cast. And then every time you, and I love this thing. This thing's hilarious. You get +1 to cast, and then every time you unbind a spell, you get an additional +1 to cast. So when I played a walkthrough game with my daughter last night, or the night before, I took just like a bunch of regular goblins. I didn't take anything too crazy, but I put that relic on, and then I would just like unbind all her spells and like just accumulate these +1s to cast, and it was just more just so I could see how it interacts, and it's super funny. I love it. And then the lore of the Spider Fangs, Scuttling Terrors has a casting value of 6. You pick a unit wholly within 18 inches, and it gets to make a normal move. Out of phase movement in any game GW makes is incredibly powerful. So if you can out of phase movement with your spiders, do it. Right? Like, I just feel like the spiders are getting slept on. Again, maybe I'm wrong. It's just from the conversations that I've had, it's a lot of trolls are the big thing, right? Like, that's what a lot of people are bringing. And I just think spiders are getting slept on. And I think that's probably where I'm going to start looking at next. But I'm going to be playing squigs for a while because that's what I've gotten. They're a lot of fun. Sneaky Distraction goes off on a 7 until your next hero phase. Subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made by enemy units while they are within range of the caster. That's not terrible, but honestly, if Homeboy's within 12 of an enemy unit, you're probably not in a good spot. And then Curse of the Spider God goes off on a 7. You pick one enemy unit within 24 inches invisible until the start of your next hero phase. Hit rolls for attacks made by that unit always fail on an unmodified roll of 1 or 2 instead of a 1, and save rolls for attacks that target it. Oh, that's pretty spicy. There's not a lot with a 2-up save, but that also means if you've got a 2-up save from like having your birthday, whatever it's called, right? Our finest hour. I've just started calling it having my birthday. I know like best day ever is another colloquialism I've heard. And then like, what's the other one you could do? Mystic Shield or the All Out Defense. Like if you can do something like that to get you to a 2-up or whatever, doesn't matter. 1s and 2s always fail. That's spicy. And then 1s and 2s always fail on hits. Again, not super relevant, but can be if put on the right things, especially if you know like that all-out attack is coming, stuff like that. That's a pretty good spell. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm going to get it on the table and I'm just going to be like, this is trash. But again, just from my limited experience and looking at what I'm seeing, that's pretty solid. The Arachnarok Spider, this is going to be another wizard. He's... Sorry, I just looked at the spider bows and saw that they were 10 attacks and was just like, okay, man. The Web Spinner Shaman on Arachnarok is armed with the Spider God Staff. Spider bows are 16-inch range, hits on 4s, wounds on 5s. And I think that's how they keep goblins from being just a shooting army, is everything basically wounds on 5s or hits on 5s. Crooked Spears are 8 attacks, 5s and 4s. I'm probably ordering this today, right? Like, it's what I want. Like, I love them. I'm getting some Spider Riders this week for my buddy. He's going to unload them on me. Crooked Spears are 8 attacks. Spider God Staff is a single attack. So, again, same interaction. The Chitinous Legs we'll have to look at, and the Monstrous Fangs we'll have to look at. The units, blah, 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 blah. We got to touch screen it. He can cast 2 spells and then bind 1. So, 250 points. Monstrous Fangs hit on a 2 or a wound on a 2? Hits on 2s, wounds on 3s, neg 1, 3 damage. The Chitinous Legs get 8 attacks in his top bracket. He looks pretty spicy. What's his save? 16 wounds with a 4-up save. So he's actually meatier than a Mangler. He doesn't have the mobility, but he's a meatier Mangler. I can't believe that just came out of my mouth. He's got Venom of the Spider God. Has a casting value of 6 and a range of 18. Pick one friendly Spider Fang unit wholly within range and visible until the start of your next hero phase. Add 1 to the number of mortal wounds caused by Spider Venom ability on a hit roll of 6. If the casting value was 10 or more, pick up the D3. Kevin, I don't know if you're still in here. I got a question for you if you are, buddy. If this rule says wounds caused by the Spider Venom ability, if the unmodified hit roll was 6, and then they're receiving the light of the moon that makes the Spider Venom happen on an unmodified value of 5, do they get regular Venom on 5s and then spell Venom on 6s? Because the Venom spell explicitly calls out that it happens on unmod hit rolls of 6? Or does the receiving the light replace this unmodified hit roll of 6 and they just get the spell version all the time? Hey, what's up? Kevin Ironjaw. What's up, buddy? That's what I figured. Yep, I saw. Welcome, Kevin. We just got done talking about our game and how silly it was. Sorry you missed it, man. We're actually just kind of going over some of the data sheets that I want to start looking at next before I finish this up. Designers note, if an unmodified affected by the light of the bad moon... Oh, it's right there in front of me. All I had to do was read anyway. Thanks. All right, so... And then Catch Web Spider Shrine, add 1 to the casting rolls while they're within 12 inches of any friendly models with this ability. Nice. And I don't know if he could take the staff, though. He might not be able to take the staff. That might be Moon Clan only. No worries, man. It's one of those where I realized I messed up one of my rules, and I absolutely could have at least got that game to a tie, but reading's hard, and knowing your rules is better than not knowing them. The Loon Shrine, actually, you only need to be 3 inches from enemy models, and it was just like, poo, that's all right. Now I'll remember it for next time. So really, like, it's one of those, like, knowing that for next time, I definitely know I could have at least got to a tie. Maybe one, but definitely at least gotten to a tie, I'm pretty sure. But only because I know how the game went. Like, knowing that you failed to smash the terrain and knowing that I rolled a successful revive on 2 separate turns is the only reason that I can look back in retrospect and know it. In the moment, no, I would have had no clue. But knowing how the game turned out, it was just like, damn it, I messed up. Oh well. I had a ton of fun playing either way, is what it is. But yeah, so I think, again, I just think the spiders look really good. And I don't think we need to go through all of them. I am curious to know what the flinger is. And I'm just going to kind of look through 36-inch range, 3s and 3s for 1 damage. How many attacks does that get? Oh, I see. The attack's characteristic is equal to the number of... if any attacks made with this unit's flinger score a hit after those have been on a 2+. Man! That's incredible. I love this. That's fair. So, like, when I've talked to people about Gits, the only thing I've heard people say good about them is trolls, right? And I don't have the experience that you guys do yet. But from what the conversations that I've had, everybody's just like, you should play trolls, you should play trolls, you should play trolls. And I'm just like, I don't want to, but I get it. Gotcha. Yeah, I could see that. They take up a lot of space. They could probably be pretty hard to maneuver. I could see that. But like I said, everybody's been like, trolls. And I'm like, they're cool. I like them. Like, visually, I think they're cool models. But I like having mobility. I like the speed. That's one of the reasons the squigs to me are so much fun, is because like I can go, right? Like I know I can get to where I need to get to most situations. And as a person who, coming from 40K, played a very mobile army, like I play Drukhari, they're very mobile. When I play orcs, I play a very mobile brand of orcs with a lot of bikes and stuff. So it just like the squigs and the spiders just seem to fit in my wheelhouse a little bit better than the trolls. And looking at the spiders, I just feel like there's definitely some good competitive play here. I agree they're probably very swingy because you need sixes for them to really get some damage output. Uh, but that's why we roll dice, man. Like I said, I already know the Ragnarok's going to be just the other guy. I just kind of wanted to see what those were. And I wanted to look at the Spider Riders because I haven't looked at the base Spider Riders in a while. 10-inch move, 5-up save. I assume without looking that they probably gain battle line if you have Spider as your warlord, because that's how the squigs interact too. The Boingrots become battle line if you have a specific war boss or warlord. General is the term for AOS. I gotta like get my terminology. That was one of the things that ended up happening at the tournament. Is I forget what I had said, and I'll have to look at that in a second. I know the spells are really good. There's two that, like, when I read them, I'm like, those look really good. One is like you can just make a move in the hero phase with a unit, and then the other one is like you pick an enemy unit within 24, and like ones automatically fail and twos automatically fail for the hit rolls and the saving throws. So it's one of those like it gets pretty interesting. Let's look at that command trait. I'll pull it up real quick. Command traits. Blessings of the Bad Moon, Squig Whisperer. So that's the blessings. Must be an artifact. Let's see. Scuttle Boss. Only on modified hit rolls of 5 or 6. Yeah, that's really good. Can we do that? Double the amount of mortal wounds that are inflicted by this general spider ability. That's pretty good too. Man. Whew, that could get spicy. And then add 2 to this general's troglodytic treasures. There was something else. Oh, I wanted to look at the staff and see if anybody could take that real quick while I was looking at that. Or if that was restricted to Moon Clan. And the Totem of the Spider God is actually solid. I would definitely take the Scuttle Boss, like you said, Kevin. That's really good. But the Totem of the Spider God could have some use. It just has a 12-inch aura of bonus mortal wounds. Like, you could really stack that up then. Where is that staff? Oh, these are Moon Clan hero only. Yeah. So yeah, can't take the staff for the spiders. Big sad. Makes sense, though. Yep. So going back to these handsome fellas. Only thing, I face spiders with Kragnos, and they just deep strike with 3d6 charges. That'd be hilarious. I think one of the biggest strengths of AOS is a game you take pretty much any well-constructed list. Yeah, and that's what I'm finding also, is that you can really, as long as you understand each unit's role, you have a lot of flexibility in list building, is what I'm finding. It's understanding how to use everything. Like, I'm a firm believer, not so much right now in the state of 10th edition 40K, but throughout most of ninth, I was a firm believer that most units could be used in a competitive sense. You just had to understand how to use them. Now, obviously, there's always going to be a case of some are just better than others, but when a game is this big, you can't avoid that. I also did consider Kragnos, Kevin. I was looking at him and I was like, man, that might be a thing just for the memes. Getting 3D 6-inch charges with squigs, and then 3D 6-inch movement with a squig, and then 2D 6-inch movement with a squig, and just having that much mobility, but I don't need it. It's more just like I would do it because I could, not because I should. But yeah, that's one of those, like, I definitely feel like they have play. And again, I just feel like, just like the squigs, I feel like the spiders would fit like kind of right in my wheelhouse because of how they look like they play. I do like that they all have bows, even though they don't really do that much. Multi-phase damage is still better than not multi-phase damage, in my opinion. The crooked spears don't really do much, and that's okay, but you're not taking the spider riders for the crooked spears. You're taking them for the fangs, and you're hoping you get hit rolls of 6, right? Like, you're gonna take, how big is this unit? A unit of 5. I would probably reinforce it, make it a unit of 10, and just roll 20 dice and hope you get 6s. Like, it's really what you're doing. But again, they're also 2 wounds. Like, they're not gonna just die. They'll die quickly, but they're gonna kind of be like my squigs, where they're gonna stay on the table a little bit longer than people probably expect. Uh, Yep, there it is. Battle line if general is Spiderfang. So really, like, to me, that's the next side of this army that I want to explore, is the spider side. And I actually almost want to kind of do like just a Gloomspite army at some point, where it's like I'm bringing a little bit of everything, just to kind of see how that feels. From a competitive sense, I think that's going to be probably the weakest way to do it. Like, you're going to have a lot of tools in your toolbox, but you're not going to have a lot of strengths, right? Like with the squigs, when you run all squigs, you have a lot of strength in the fact that everything's hypermobile and it's got a lot of damage potential. When you're running the goblins, your strength is that you just have a lot of trash, right? Like, you just have a lot of trash wounds that you can throw everywhere for point scoring. And then you have things like your fanatics that you can hide in those units to just like get your damage output. And then with the spiders, you have a lot of mobility and a lot of swingy damage output, but you have potentially, yes. And that's what I would do if I were going to run just like all soup, just because then I'm able to revive things a little bit more reliably and make sure it's coming back on the table with the Loon Shrine a little bit better. So it's one of those, like, I'm glad that, because that's where my brain was. So I'm glad hearing that is like, yes. Because again, when you're doing that, you're bringing things back. Like, that's what you're relying on, is bringing back your chaff to recycle units. And King's Gits is going to help do that more reliably. So it's one of those, like I said, like, you know, spiders have arguably more mobility than the squigs in some ways, because of the fact that they have multi-phase movement rather than just, I move really far in one phase and then charge, and then, you know, like your movement isn't locked to one phase plus charge. It's, I can do it in the hero phase with something, I can do it in the movement phase. So it's one of those where I'm eager to kind of get these on the table, even if I just have to proxy them with a few other things while I'm kind of figuring things out. I think it's going to be a really neat concept and a neat army, and I'm eager to kind of see how it goes. I don't know what grand strategy I would look at for that. Obviously not Slaughter of Sorcery. Shout out to scoring Slaughter of Sorcery on some wonky dice rolling. Two games in a row. I scored that just because of some weird dice, man. and it's funny. It makes me laugh, and that's what we're here for. But I will say again, the Spider Riders are cheap too, though. At 90 points, you're getting 10 wounds with a 5-up save and 10-inch movement. I can't complain. So, but yeah, that's really, like I said, where I wanted to kind of look at and touch on. I just wanted to look at a few of the different units that I was thinking, like, hey, you could really do something neat with this. I think the spiders look pretty fun. Again, if I were going to change anything at all on my list from what I brought Saturday, I arguably either consolidate all the squigs into one unit or the Boingrots into one unit, or I drop one Mangler to ramp up some of those units and support them a little bit better. You know, 3 Manglers is probably where the sweet spot is, so that I can now bring like 10 more Boingrots and just have 2 units of 10 Boingrots. That's probably, from a competitive standpoint, a much smarter way to play it. I can't complain. Having multiple missions where I could get surrounded and destroy, like turn 1, pretty solid. And a lot of that was because of how I built my list. And it wasn't intentional. That was purely accidental. So, again, big thanks for joining me. Big shout out to South Bend AOS. Kevin, great event. Had a blast. I know Sean was the TO, but I know you're also very heavily involved in what happens there. And I just want to tell you, man, it is such a wonderful community that you have fostered. I really appreciate that you guys have let me become a part of it. It has been a blast. And the other Kevin, Kevin Ironjaw, again, thank you for the rematch. Thank you for another fun game. Thank you for the ability to play and just learn. Because, again, every time you and I play, man, it is a fun game. And I know it's only been twice, but it's been fun. I've had a good time, and I've been able to learn. And that's been the main thing. I think it's not going to be like I was told, it's not going to be too much longer before I'm really doing well at these events, right? Like I think I'm 2-1 is in my near future. And that being said, I am committed to a 40K tournament at the end of the month, but there's a good chance I end up probably dropping from that for a lot of reasons I'm not going to touch on the platform. Some of them have to do with the time commitment. I will say that it is a 2-day event, and I've got a lot of VA appointments coming up in Chicago that weren't on the schedule that are now on the schedule. So like the 2-day time commitment plus having to drive to Chicago multiple days and multiple weeks is going to be a thing that's going to keep me from committing to that, I think. And what I may end up doing is just trying to see if there's any local AOS events and seeing if I can maybe get a 1-day event in on that weekend or the weekend prior. So, yeah, and if there's obviously if I can find an AOS GT, I absolutely will. The biggest thing for me is my in-between time is always a little weird. Like my availability is weird because of like taking care of the kids and doing the things that I do as a dad and having certain priorities that I have when it comes to, family time. It's one of those, like, I try my very best when it's family time for it to just be family time, and that's it. So it's one of those, like, a lot of times my availability is during the day, and that doesn't always work for everybody, which is why I struggle to, like, get games in. Like, I've wanted to jump in your guys' Discord and be like, hey, let's get a game in, and I really should, because I want to start streaming Sigmar games also, because I already stream 40K, and I wouldn't mind streaming Sigmar and getting that going on a weekly or every other week basis. So it's one of those, like, I need to just start getting out there and going, hey, who's got availability in the mornings? So, because while the kids are at school, that's pretty much my availability. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And now that the kids are getting old enough to play, that helps me out a lot in getting games in. Because, like, while, yes, I'm teaching Izzy how to play, it helps me get the core rules down so much better. And that's where I found was the biggest difference between the GT that I went to and then this 3 day or this 3 rounder that we just did was my knowledge of the core rules was way higher. Oh, shit, yeah, dude. uh, oh, awesome. I didn't realize, and I probably should have asked you, but that's fine, man. I'm in Valpo. So, yeah, it's one of those, absolutely. And Kevin, yeah, anytime you want to come by and do a stream game, you're more than welcome. Either one of you two, honestly. It's in my basement. It is a basement. Like, it's not like carpeted and crazy. Like, it's a basement. But it has walls and it's like warm and everything. But it's absolutely open. Anytime either of you want to come get a stream game in, I'm down for it. I am open to getting my ass kicked on the internet. It has happened a few times. So, absolutely, I am 100% game. We'll get it going. That being said, I'm going to jump off here because I need to eat lunch. I have not eaten yet, and I need to actually get some other things going before I have to pick kids up from school. So I appreciate everybody coming, hanging out with me, talking about AOS. I have definitely found this to be a fantastic game. Third edition is definitely a much better game than I feel like second was, but I didn't play a ton of second. Super, super excited to learn more and play more. Thanks a lot. Everybody have a great day.